Through the first 3 races, we have seen 3 different winners, and now before we get to the Christmas and New Year's break, we go road course racing in the Sim500 Kickass Snacks Winter Xfinity Series here on RaceSpotTV. Do not go away. This is going to be an exciting one.
Growing up as a kid in Oklahoma, where I'm from, the Chili Bowl is the biggest race that we have. The Chili Bowl has kind of been my favorite race of the year. Growing up a dirt racer in Oklahoma, that's kind of the holy grail.
It might be wintertime and things might be cooling down, but the high banks of Daytona Speedway are going to be heating up tonight with the Sim500 Kickass Snacks Xfinity Series here, running on the road course instead of the regular oval. Myself, Randy Chinnick, Nolan Rempel, and Hugo Louis will be bringing you every bit of this 46-lap event here on RaceSpotTV. And well, Nolan, it's a bit of an interesting track here at Daytona. A lot of people, of course, can be familiar with it, mostly due to the Rolex. We're running that exact same layout. But many people have not run stock cars around this place, and this place is pretty tricky in these cars. Pretty high top speed you get. You don't have a lot of aerodynamic help trying to slow that car down in a couple of hard braking zones, particularly going into turn 1 and going into the bus stop, and of course even getting through the bus stop and even that kink in the infield. Not a lot of aerodynamics on these cars really pushing them to the ground like we see with the prototypes and the GT cars every February.
Well, you said it, like these sections can be very, very difficult with these lower downforce cars because they're more built for the oval. They're not really designed for the road course, which is going to make the start of this race so interesting, I feel. And of course, like even in a GT3 car or a prototype, it's still difficult to get right under braking for turn 1 and of course the entry to that bus stop chicane. You have to be very decisive, and I feel like it would not be uncommon if we saw several incidents, particularly in those two corners today.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really the hazard here, is going through that bus stop chicane on the back straightaway and going into turn 1, because a lot of these guys, I'm sure they've gone through there and practiced probably by themselves, but the speed you can carry into the bus stop and into turn 1 when you actually have a really strong slipstream can be really, really immense. And just for reference, these guys are doing about 190 into the bus stop chicane all by themselves and are then having to back that braking zone way, way, way up when you apply some slipstream to it. So this is going to be an exciting one to watch for sure. Going to be plenty of passing opportunities, of course, into turn 1 and into that bus stop chicane as well. Let's just hope that everyone can keep it on the black asphalt, also known as the island, unless we end up seeing this race just get strung out. Qualifying currently underway. About 2.5 minutes left in this. Currently it's EJ O'Rourke who leads the way with a 143.961. Only driver in the 143s. Second is Anthony DeBarro with a 144 flat.
Yeah, the qualifying times can start coming down here, and of course you got back there in third place Tommy Ryan with a 144.4. So the times can vary a little bit, as you've seen throughout the practice, for instance. It's definitely going to be one of the trickier factors. Like the times that people are running here, I'm noticing that a lot of them are actually a little bit slower than the practice laps, particularly your pole sitter currently, EJ O'Rourke. His qualifying time there, that's actually over a second slower than what is fast. Oh, actually, excuse me, I was reading that wrong. That's actually good 0.3 faster. So that was a complete mistake on my part. The times can really affect things here. With the cloud cover as well, like we've actually just noticed the clouds have begun to roll in. That can really cool the track off. We're currently at 80 degrees Fahrenheit, or say 86 degrees Fahrenheit right now. And when the track cools off, it can really make the times drop down quite a bit.
Yeah, of course, there's been a couple of hours practice run already, so that track temperature is going to be varying, of course. But even then, having the practice times actually be quicker than qualifying times for some people around this place really isn't much of a big surprise, Nolan, because you have the draft when you're, of course, in practice. You have other cars on track you can slipstream off of, and that could potentially, I know in some of the cars, be upwards of 1 second to 2 seconds a lap just sitting in someone's slipstream around this place. Now, of course, these cars, they don't punch quite the same hole in the air, mostly because they don't have a big rear wing sticking out of the back the way a prototype or a GT car does, but you're still probably going to find at least 1 second or so in the slipstream if you really know how to nail it. So for these guys, not a huge surprise to see some of these times maybe a little bit slower than what they were getting in practice, maybe with some traffic. But overall, the times are not changing really that much if you look up and down the field.
Well, you got to remember that a good portion of the lap is spent in that little road course area. The only other portion of the road course we go to, apart from this infield section here, is that bus stop chicane on the back straightaway. And that bus stop chicane could be why we're actually only seeing currently, actually, it looks like just over half the field is set qualifying time. So that is something that I usually don't see that sort of thing all that often. So I'm wondering if maybe people are kind of spinning out through the bus stop chicane, because you get like one loss of control or one off track here. That's it. Your qualifying time is done. As qualifying has ended, we've only got like 17 of the 29 or 31 drivers that have set a time.
Yeah, it's actually a really, really small portion. Just over half have actually managed to put in a qualifying time. Some maybe choosing not to. We've seen a couple of drivers throughout these first handful of races that typically don't put in qualifying times. But regardless, here for round number 4, let's go down your 31 car starting grid. That will be rolling them off. Out in front, it's going to be EJ O'Rourke and Anthony DeBarro on road number 1. Again, EJ, the only car getting down into that 1 minute 43 second bracket. David Comstock and Tommy Ryan, they're going to roll off on row 2 with Brandon Bowie and Mike Kelly on row number 3. Timothy Johnston and Chad Coleman, they're going to make up row 4 with Jason Jacoby and Bobby Terrell on row number 5. Glenn Campbell, Nick Silver, they'll make up row 6 with Bobby Wetzel and Jason Brown on row 7. Anthony Calantoni and Ben Kilcrease will make up row 8. with Nelson Rivera and Trey Edson on road 9. Scott Simley and Larry Pace, last week's winner Larry Pace, will make up your top 20. These drivers have all not qualified from the row ahead of Edson and Simley. So then we roll on back to Nick Cohen and Randy Yoakum on the following row, as well as Patrick Colby, Brian Boris Cook, Jimmy Coleman, Joey Gattina, Jonathan Lockhart, Chris Cabot, and Sean Dower will make up the 31 cars getting ready to roll this one off. And of course, we've talked about the draft and the slipstream and coming off the bus stop and how easy it is to spin in a couple of these points of the racetrack here, Nolan. First things first, you need to get through turn 1 safe and clean the first time through. And that's not an easy task at this place for drivers that are used to running here. These guys need to be very, very careful going through that hairpin at turn 1 for the first time.
Absolutely, and I've had a couple of incidents myself, you know, where I've been crashed even before turn 1, and that's when you're running like GTEs, the Daytona prototypes, cars like that. Again, these are stock cars. They're not really designed to drive at this track, which is going to make this so interesting to see, especially in that run down to turn number 1 as the pace car gets the field rolling through the bus stop chicane for the hopefully the only time we'll be seeing under yellow.
So the field rolls their way through the bus stop. You see some of the drivers will single file their way out, and then they will get it immediately back to double file as they roll through turns number 3 and 4. So for EJ O'Rourke, sitting here on the pole position, he's going to be seeing for the only time this year that roof safety car out in front of him that we traditionally see on the road courses. Typically we see the Mustang on the ovals, but this time we see the rear engine iteration of the iRacing safety car, and as they head down towards that tri-oval, the banking will begin to flatten itself out, and that car is going to just about get ready to make that dip onto pit road. Waiting now for when that's going to happen, and then it'll be all in the hands of EJ O'Rourke for round number 4 of the Sim500 Kickass Snacks winner Xfinity Series. EJ O'Rourke is going to hold him up, and he's going to get on it. We are green here at the Daytona Road Course. It's a good start from the top 3. The rest of the field getting left in the dust as they scream into turn 1 for the first time, and Anthony Navarro wants to make something of it on the outside. Not going to be able to do so, and he's going to lose about 3 to 4 car lengths because of it, nearly falling into David Comstock as the rest of the field rolls through the first couple of corners, that awkward little chicane that follows. We are all clean through corners number 1 and 2, and now we head into the first horseshoe, and a couple of big moves getting thrown. I saw 4 wide in the back.
Yeah, we saw 4 wide a little bit. As well as that, we saw Mike Kelly, who started in 6th place, getting half spun by Jason Jacoby in the run down to that first right-hander of the road course. It went into the grass, managed to somehow recover that. EJ O'Rourke still leading up front. We saw Anthony DeBarro trying to make a move around the outside going into turn number 1. That didn't quite work out for him, and it looked like he almost ran wide a little bit. Now we can see David Comstock trying to look on the inside, but he's going to have to get back in line, and they're going to have to wait through the oval and use that draft to work his way up there. Hopefully get Anthony DeBarro going into the bus stop chicane.
EJ O'Rourke has managed himself a nice little lead this first half a lap as they run in towards the bus stop for the first time. So it's going to be about 0.5 of a second over Anthony DeBarro, and then you see the entire rest of the field here, Nolan. Look at the way everyone's gotten themselves spread out. We've not seen any really hard contacts, only that 1/2 a spin. The whole field is just already so spread thin from what you would typically see at the start of one of these races. Everyone's through the bus stop now for the first time. Couple cars maybe having some loose moments, but I don't see anyone having really major trouble for the first lap. As it comes through, all 31 cars will finish lap number 1 as EJ gets ready to head down in towards that braking zone at turn 1 once again. Comstock wants to make something of this around the outside of DeBarro. Not going to happen.
Not quite, and I don't think turn 1 is really one of those corners that you can make a move around the outside. You've got to be able to get on the inside of the car you're chasing, on the inside of turn 1. It's really the only way you're going to be able to make it. But then, of course, that puts you in a bad spot for turn 2 as we see him move for the lead here. Anthony DeBarro on the inside of EJ O'Rourke. Can he clear him, though? They're side by side still in the run down to that left-hand kink. Will he clear? The answer is no, and Anthony DeBarro has to slip back in behind.
not over yet, though, because you can slot a move around the outside of this corner if you properly pinch that driver in front of you. EJ's going to overdrive it, though, and David Comstock's going to have a shot of this as they head down now in towards turn 6 to bring themselves back up onto the oval. DeBarro's going to slot it up the inside. EJ's forced wide, and he's going to use that curbing a little bit liberally, and here comes DeBarro for the race lead. He's going to just about get clear of that 41 car as they roll through NASCAR 1 and 2. Now, how is EJ going to play this? Is he going to settle back into second place, or is he going to really fight with DeBarro here going in towards the bus stop? He's going to slot it up the inside. Going into the very next braking zone, that 41 Kickass beef jerky car has about half a car lane, so he can go side by side through the bus stop. DeBarro is going to go through the grass. That's going to collect him a slowdown penalty, and that's going to stack up your top 5. And DeBarro is going to go from losing 1 spot down to about 5 or 6.
Oh, that was so tight, but good on Anthony DeBarro for bailing out of that, because if he didn't go through the grass there, that for sure would have been a crash that would have collected your top 2 drivers, including EJ O'Rourke and DeBarro. I do think, though, that with proper help, Anthony DeBarro, who's still dropping back heavily, he could potentially work himself the way up there, but as they bring themselves down through turn 1 once again, David Comstock still looking forward. EJ O'Rourke pushes wide, and that will allow Comstock in on the inside. He's going to clear him, and that will allow him to have a huge run here down at that turn number 3 there, that right-hander. Oh, and it's a little bit of a shove from Brandon Boyd on the rear end of EJ O'Rourke, and that will push O'Rourke wide. Big wobble coming on the exit of the corner, but manages to somehow hang on to it.
EJ's really struggling on these hard braking zones, it seems like, Nolan, especially going into turn 1. I don't think I've seen him take turn 1 really well or correctly since the start of this race as they work now through turn 5, get ready to head towards turn 6. I think he's just uncomfortable under the brakes, maybe locking up either the front tires or the rear tires. I'm not really sure what the issue is, but he's struggling to get to the apex of that corner. And again here at turn 6, similar situation. He's just, I don't know what the problem is. He just seems to be tight from center off. That's going to allow Brandon Bowie to maybe be able to make a move here going down the Daytona super stretch when they eventually get off of NASCAR turn 2. So let's see what happens. That 41 car not looking the most confident on the brakes. Let's see if Bowie will maybe make something of this going into the bus stop. No, he's not actually going to. But I would carefully watch this 41 car as he goes into turn 1 this coming lap, because EJ does not look comfortable whatsoever. The couple cars are struggling a bit through the bus stop. I saw both Jacoby and I think Bowie have bits of hiccups.
Yeah, just a little bit. We saw Bowie's drop back significantly in that bus stop chicane there. O'Rourke does have damage on the back end of that car now because of the shot that Brandon Bowie gave him going into that right-hander 180-degree corner. Now down into turn number 1. This will be for the 4th time today. Will O'Rourke manage to collect himself? No, he runs really wide, and he's locked it up, and he shoves it wide, and that will allow Bowie to close in a ton. And now he's right on the bumper. Will he be able to give him another punt? Going into this next corner, here they come, down through the braking zone, but he's not going to be close enough this time.
Bowie's so close, and even still, EJ struggling to get to the apex of turn number 3 at the International Horseshoe, and now EJ has a big stack of cars behind him starting to line up. You have not only, of course, Brandon Bowie, but you have Timothy Johnston, who's right there, and then Mike Kelly, Jason Jacoby, and Tommy Ryan all in the same train as EJ through turn 5, still struggling to get that car turned in. I think EJ, we've seen him have a very quick time in qualifying, Nolan. I think he's done so much practice trying to do single lap, hot laps, but he's not really sure of how to drive this car here on the full fuel load, because just seems like he's braking about 30 to 40 feet a little bit too late every single one of those hairpins, because every time he goes into one, it seems like he's a car width and a half wide of the apex, and he's turning in super early and then tracking out really, really wide and not carrying any speed off the corner.
Yeah, that's definitely seeming to be the case, and I've seen this several times in other series, you know, where you got these drivers, they'll like set their car up, they'll get a fantastic qualifying lap, but then they just fall back in the long run pace because they don't have the pace. All this fighting behind has allowed David Comstock, though, to get a massive lead over the rest of the field here. He's pulling over a second and a half ahead of the rest of these guys here. Oh my goodness, it was so close for a couple laps there. I do think, though, that for sure Brandon Bowie, he is not going to be letting EJ O'Rourke get a break.
Hey, that's exactly what you don't want to happen here. You see EJ out there in that second spot struggling. If you're Brandon Bowie, you need to keep up the pressure. Talked about the gap that David Comstock has built up about being around a second and a half. It was out to 2 seconds when they crossed that start-finish line, so only taking 4 laps really, to get to that point. EJ once again a little bit wide through turn 3 as they head down now in towards the kink at turn 4. We got a car around at the International Horseshoe. It's the 99 of Tommy Ryan. Did he have help coming off of that corner? I don't think he did, and indeed that was the situation. I saw him have a loose movement on the opening couple laps of this race going through there, so I think it's the same situation, just going through that corner, picked the throttle up a little bit too hard. Very easy mistake to make here, Nolan.
And we also saw Glenn Campbell also got spun around as well. That was going into turn number 1 actually, and he of course spun under the brakes and actually managed to drive himself into the pit exit lane and smack the tire wall. You saw that on your replay screens just a little while ago. So he's dropped back. He's no doubt also got suspension damage as he goes for another half spin in turn number 6, just barely managing to hang on to it as we look back up to your fight for second place.
With Brandon Bowie, who has taken that fight for second place. So EJ O'Rourke dropping into that third spot as you see the shades start falling over the circuit with the clouds bringing themselves over. Don't worry, we're not going into nighttime just yet here, but let's see if Bowie's going to be able to stretch away from EJ O'Rourke, as we're also keeping an eye on the fight with 6th and 7th. That's Jason Jacoby and Trey Edson. We've seen these guys do battle a couple times thus far this season. Of course, Jason, pretty popular streamer, streaming the race from his perspective. You can find the URL for that likely on the hood of his race car. But checking in with EJ as he goes through turn 1, everything seems a lot much calmer this time through. So seems like it's taken him a handful of laps here, Nolan, but he's sort of starting to figure it out, especially after allowing Brandon Bowie to get around him. He's really backed those braking markers up just that little extra bit that he needed. Now, instead of being an adventure through the likes of turn 1, it's being a lot calmer and cooler and just really keeping all 4 tires planted.
Yeah, that's what you want to see. Like, you know, it might take a little bit sometimes, but you know, people will eventually get it. We actually saw though, O'Rourke ran really wide through the left-hand kink, got himself into the grass, managed to collect himself. And one other car that I saw go for a little slide on the back was Mike Kelly in that in the number 2 car, driving in position number 5. And of course, now as they enter onto the oval now for the 6th time today, we will have 40 laps to go at the line. You can see, there you see David Comstock. He's moved up 2 spots at the start of this race, and Brandon Bowie up 3. And your Pulsar has dropped 2, and I just don't think he's going to be able to recover after what we can safely say to be quite a disastrous first couple laps to his race.
Yeah, it really was. Of course, there's still some options here. You got tire strategy and you have fuel strategies. You also take a look at Trey Edson, up 11 spots thus far in this event. So starting 18th, did not actually get a qualifying time in at all. He was the very first car to not qualify, and he's actually moving his way forward. And just as I say that, I think he may have collected a slowdown going through the bus stop chicane. Indeed he did. He kind of caught that first curb a little bit awkwardly, and that spat him out onto the grass for the right-hander. So he's going to drop a spot there to Anthony DeBarro, but he should be back up to speed, at least going through the exit of turn 1. As we take a look at our running order, we also only have 1 car that's down lapped. That's Sean Dower in the number 68. Everyone else is currently still out there and rolling. Not very many cars been much damage at all, with any damage at all. In fact, one of the few is actually a 42 with David Comstock with a slightly bent front bumper after one of those issues at the start of the race where he got into one of those race leaders. We're looking at a battle. What do you see, Nolan?
Anthony DeBarro went for a little slide through the right-hand kink, lost a lot of ground, managed to save it somehow. And he didn't collect any damage either. He didn't get any help. It was just one of those incidents under braking, so he just barely managed to hang on to that. Great driving by that number 27 car. His tires must be a bit angry at him, though, because, of course, Trey Edson right behind him, he's closed in a lot since that incident.
Definitely lose a lot of speed with a slide like that, so it's not really a surprise whatsoever as we're going to ride on board that Carolina driver as they head on to the oval. You saw Anthony DeBarro a little bit wide going there through that corner before coming up on towards NASCAR 1 and 2. So Edson in that Kickass Max Camaro might be able to work the slipstream here and make something happen, going down in towards the bus stop chicane, but not going to be able to reel in the kind of real estate that he would have needed to. However, he might be able to play with the fuel a little bit, and you see exactly how early they're getting on the brakes here compared to some of those GT cars we typically see. For reference, whenever we do these onboard shots, going into the bus stop, you're typically going to be braking at that yellow signpost on the right. But as I say that, the 10 car not going to be thinking of lifting at all. He's going to get a run on the 27 of DeBarro, and he's just about going to nose ahead and pull on clear. So Anthony DeBarro will lose that 6th spot and move the 10 of Trey Edson into it.
I think these little incidents with the car sliding under braking, I think that's something that we'll be able to see very frequently throughout this race, especially when the tires start to fall away, because you got to remember that, I've said this already so many times, so I'm going to sound like a broken record here. Again, these cars aren't built for the heavy braking zones, though. Like, even IRL, these cars only really race, I believe, like, what, 1 or 2 different road courses over the entire year? So the majority of the time, these cars race on ovals, and for the road courses, this is not one of them. DeBarro goes for another little slide, trying to get underneath Trey Edson, manages to collect himself just as I say that. Jason Jacoby now looking to see if he can put some pressure on and force Anthony DeBarro into another costly mistake.
And these cars definitely don't spend a lot of time on the road courses. I know the Xfinity cars, they run a slightly different schedule than what we see from the Cup guys. The Cup guys, of course, at Sonoma, Watkins Glen, and of course recently the Charlotte Roval. The Xfinity cars did take a trip to the Charlotte Roval, but they also race at places such as Mid-Ohio and Road America. The trucks also go to a couple different venues as well, most notably Mosport up in Canada, which is one of the most difficult circuits in the entire world, even for experienced road course racing. Meanwhile, out in front, David Comstock, as we're approaching 10 laps into this event, Nolan, 3.7 seconds clear ahead of that 88 of Brandon Bowie. That was just such a well-timed pass that he had on EJ when he was able to make, when he was able to get that race lead, because Bowie got held up, I think, quite a bit from that 41 car of EJ O'Rourke, and that handed Comstock probably at least, I think, 2 seconds out there on the racetrack.
Yeah, that did hand him a lot of time, as we've seen, and we're going to continue to see this all throughout the course of this motorsport event. They cross onto the start-finish line, through the start-finish line once more, and this is just something we're going to have to really keep an eye on, especially when they hit the oval. With the slipstream and everything that we're seeing, we're going to look back now to Shane Ewing and Larry Pace in their fight for 26th spot. Larry Pace now trying to make the move on the back straightaway. This could get antsy here coming into the bus stop chicane. He does manage to get the move done, and that will be for 26th
Oh, your
place.
car around. Jimmy Coleman, big hit coming through the bus stop chicane. Huge problems. Not sure what happened here. Everything looks sort of okay, but I think he just caught a weird, actually no, he just got a little bit loose, lost the rear end coming off that sort of fourth part of the bus stop, and just overcorrected and just speared that car on the outside wall. So that's day done for the number 3 Toyota.
That is very unfortunate, something you really don't want to see. And we can see now over here as well, as we look back live, Robert Gillenwater making the move on Shane Ewing for 26th spot now as they put themselves down through turn 1 once more. This is going to be more of a 3, 4, possibly 5 car battle in total for 24th place. As we see, there goes Robert Gillenwater really deep on the brakes to get himself around Chris Gilbo, and almost sacrifices another spot. Shane Ewing does Gilbo, and Gillenwater picks up another spot. He's now going to be hunting down Larry Pace.
He quickly reels Larry in through the kink, might be able to have a shot at it. Going up the inside of turn 6, that's exactly what he's going to do. Slots it down to the inside, and Robert's going to pick that spot up, but he's not done yet. Is Larry Pace. He's going to try to work the cutback. Is that number 30 car, and not quite going to get it. And actually, you know what? Gillenwater is going to sort of lift out of it and allow Larry Pace to take the apex coming back up onto the oval. But Larry gets it a little bit wide, drives it a bit deep, and gets a little bit loose. So if Gillenwater chooses, he could definitely make a move going in towards this bus stop chicane. So these drivers running towards the tail end of the field, they aren't the quickest, but they're doing their best to put on a good show as they roll down the super stretch, head down in towards the braking zone. I don't think Gillenwater is going to be anywhere near close enough to make a move. Seems like Larry Pace is braking a heck of a lot earlier than Gillenwater is, but you also see Gillenwater pushing way wide through the bus stop there.
Yeah, that was costly for Gillenwater to push wide like that, and it was actually a bit wise as well for for Gillenwater to make room for Larry Pace, because he recognized that Pace was not going to give up without a fight. And sure enough, Pace did get the maneuver down on the cutback and managed to put himself up another spot. A lot of these cars actually do have like some mild damage on the rear of their cars, probably from little hits here or there. You know, it's not uncommon to see in these types of cars, especially at a road course like Daytona. as they come down through turn 1. Once again, now it's Ewing's turn to push just a little wide on the exit of turn 1. And Chris Gilbo in the back there of your screen under attack now from Randy Yoakum. Oh, there's a trouble up front. Two cars around, actually, along with Jonathan Lockhart as well.
That was Chris Cabot who got into the back of Shane Ewing. I don't know if Shane lifted early. I don't know what happened to the 6th car. That I actually missed of Jonathan Lockhart. We'll try to see what happened there. I think he lost that all on his own. And I think what happened is that Shane Ewing was slowing down likely for the local yellow, I think, and then Chris Cabot got into him. However, it's also possible Shane Ewing got really loose coming through turn 2, that little sort of left-right chicane that you get, right-left chicane you get coming off of or through turn 1. And I think he just didn't have the speed that he's used to having, and he used his normal brake zone, and because of that, he checked up so much that Cabot really had no time to react when he eventually got to the brakes. So big problems happening there in the tail end of the mid-pack. That's about your mid-20s is where that fight was happening, and that pretty much spreads that battle right out.
Yeah, certainly did. And, you know, we're seeing a lot of antsy maneuvers going on here. We saw Randy Yoakum make a bit of a move on Chris Gilbo going in, and it looked like there might have been a little bit of a ghost contact because all of a sudden Gilbo got extremely loose, managed to hold on to it, but sacrificed a lot of time up to Randy Yoakum now. So that was really strange, honestly, to see that happen. Larry Pace still trying to hunt down Robin Gilliwater up front there. This is still for 24th place now. It really just shows how even in the back of the field, you really can see battles going on everywhere, so close. And Pace tried to get the over-under on him, but didn't quite work. He had to actually back out of it, and that causes him to lose a lot of time. And he's going to have some work to do now.
Turn 1. We had Randy Yoakum just had an incident down at turn 1, and I believe the 1 car just went really wide as well. So everyone plowing into turn 1 on this lap. See Randy Yoakum spin down in towards the inside, and Chris Cabot, I think, somewhat trying to avoid, just went way off into the runoff, sort of between the turn 1 and the re-entry going back up onto the oval. So a disaster here already in the mid-pack, and that's going to sort of spread this battle way out. We're going to look back up the field, though, to the battle happening for 4th place. You have Timothy Johnston here fighting with Trey Edson and E.J. O'Rourke. Edson's going to have the spot as they head across start-finish. You also have Mike Kelly and Anthony DeBarro behind as well. So these drivers still duking it out up amongst your top 5, 12 laps into this thing, coming up towards quarter distance. And actually, E.J. O'Rourke really slow exit off of turn 1, and Trey Edson's going to take advantage.
This is going to be really tight here coming in through these next couple corners. We have had an incident further to the back. We'll get back to that shortly as there's more contact through the middle of the field there. Timothy Johnston just barely getting punted. Manages to somehow hang on to that. We'll get back to that in a little moment. That was a fight for 13th, but this is definitely much more interesting to watch right now as they are single file all the way down, and Jason Jacoby in the back looking to join the parties. He makes a move ahead to DeBarro, just barely, not quite touches it, but he really startled DeBarro, it seems, because DeBarro was really loose as he had to really jump out there to correct. DeBarro now deep on the brakes, and that won't help him at all, allowing Jacoby to get on his inside here. He's going to be able to pick up a spot.
Not going to have it just yet, though. DeBarro will have the momentum up top, but Jacoby will have the shorter run down right along that bottom groove. And where is the advantage going to go there? Through the center of the corner. It's going to be advantage DeBarro, and as they run now on the super stretch, DeBarro will have the top end. And of course, they're now going in a straight line, so the distances are equal, and DeBarro is going to end up winning out in that one. Trey Edson, by the way, able to get well and truly clear of E.J. O'Rourke after his big oversteer moment going through turn 1, a corner now 12 laps into this race. He still just continues to struggle with as Timothy Johnston is going to be trying to check into the back of that number 41 car and pick up that fight for 4th.
That was a really hairy lap there. A lot of drivers getting extremely close to one another. As E.J. O'Rourke still on the defense with Timothy Johnston down at the turn number 1. Mike Kelly and Anthony DeBarro closing the gap once more in turn number 1, along with Jason Jacoby right at the back of that field. They throttle out into this infield section once more through the left and right little kinks there. down now through turn, I think this is turn 3. This is turn 3 or turn 5, really depending on how you look at it. Right up front, Trey Edson getting really loose on the exit. We've seen that so often already this race, and we're going to continue to see it as time goes on.
Also, just keeping tabs of what's happening elsewhere in the field, we saw at one point that race lead stretch out to nearly about 4 seconds. Brandon Bowie's done a good job the last handful of laps. That gap between your top two has come down to 2.8 on the racetrack. So you see the timing down there on the bottom. 2 laps ago, Brandon Bowie reeled in 0.4 of a second. Then an astonishing 1.6 seconds, and then another 0.3 that last trip around the racetrack. So the 88 has gotten himself hooked up or figured something out, and he has reeled in 2 seconds on David Comstock in not a very long period of time.
Yeah, David Comstock especially has really got such a huge lead on the rest of these guys. He's really just run away with it since the start, but that might be coming to an end here as Brandon Bowie, as you just said, beginning to close the gap, and that is something that isn't really a huge surprise to me. Again, Comstock might have a great short run setup, but maybe Brandon Bowie has got a setup that's a bit slower short term, but is much, much faster on the long term run. And that's something that we're going to have to wait. We're going to have to wait and see how that could possibly play into our fight for the lead here, if that will develop it.
Comstock is super loose going into turn 1, and setup isn't the only difference maker here. Is actually Comstock able to stretch out a little bit of advantage through that last lap, but the way you actually drive the car is a very, very big sort of dependency on where you pick up and lose time over the course of the run. You can sort of start, you run out, and if you're really patient on the tires, you're going to start out slow at the start, but you'll be quicker than your competitors near the end of the race, at least near the end of the run, excuse me. However, you can go out there and you can go hell-bent for leather really, really early on, burn your stuff up, and then when you get deep into the run, things are just going to be all over the place like we're seeing for some of these drivers. The Comstock really is truly all over the place at the moment. I'm going through the second horseshoe, and big bite of oversteer that he managed to catch, as we're still keeping an eye on this fight for, say, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th on back. Trey Edson is involved, E.J. O'Rourke still, of course, with Johnston, Kelly, and Jacoby, all somewhat single-filed up behind. Closest is Johnston and Mike Kelly. So it'll be interesting to see if these two Toyotas end up fighting with each other before this first pit stop.
One driver that's actually been caught out of that battle here was Anthony DeBarro, who, looking back, actually ended up going into the grass in the bus stop chicane, and he got a slowdown penalty, so he lost out on all those spots again. And I'm actually also looking, and apparently it is all about how the drivers drive the car. Setup has nothing to do with it, because this is a fixed setup series, as I'm just beginning to notice here. So that it will be dependent on how you drive your car throughout the entirety of the race.
Through the bus stop goes Anthony DeBarro, and he still was not happy with that car that time through the bus stop, watching him. Very, very tight exit coming through the second part of it. Doesn't seem like he got a little bit loose going through sort of the third quarter of it, but probably dropped at least a second there, if not more. Talking about pit stops, Brandon Bowie peels down off on towards pit road, so we might have some differences in strategy that end up playing themselves out. With this being a 46-lap race, we actually have a number of cars peeling off on towards pit road. Jason Jacoby's down there, Timothy Johnston, E.J. O'Rourke. Number of cars from that lead group has come down on towards pit road. David Comstock still yet to come down, and I think what we have here today, Nolan, is potentially 2 different strategies that could play themselves out. You can either go for a 2-stopper, which would see you pit roughly now, and then once again somewhere around lap 30, or you could try to 1-stop this, just come down pit road on lap 21, 22. You generally want to come in a little earlier, so about 5 laps from now. And I think those who are opting for that 2-stop strategy, definitely just coming down pit road right here, right now. So it'll be interesting to see how this pans out going in towards that second stop in about 15 laps time.
Yeah, that'll be something to watch for sure, as Brandon Bowie gets himself, he got himself rolling. Now he's actually trapped in between 2 different cars that are both slower than he is. He gets up right up to one of them, almost gives him a bit of a shove, and the car right in front of him that he's trying to get around is, of course, Nelson Riviera in position number 10. Riviera does end up letting Bowie by. A bit of a wise maneuver. You know, Bowie's been running in 3rd place until then, and of course, like, you got to remember, like, he just got a fresh tire, so a bit of a wise maneuver from Nelson Riviera in the 22 machine. to let Bowie by there. And Bowie, of course, is going to just tear out of there as he's going to be looking into hunting down Anthony DeBarro, who is, of course, running in 5th place right now. And he's the driver that he wants to go after next.
This driver peels off onto pit road is David Comstock in the 42. He's going to be all by himself. I take that back. Trey Edson peels off as well. Mike Kelly, he's going to stay out and will be the only one of our race leaders who's yet to come down pit road. So for those currently up at the front of the field, two-stop strategy seems to be the call of the day, unless these guys are going on a very long run to the end of this race. So Mike Kelly, it'll be interesting to watch how this works out for him, because I think just based on the weather, as it's not particularly warm, only 77 degrees, partly cloudy, track temp's only in the mid-80s, so not a particularly warm day here at Daytona Beach. I think the tires should, in theory, be able to keep up until about that midway point of this race of 20, 21, 22, and you would want to come down and make that pit stop for the one-stopper.
Yeah, that'd definitely be a reasonable decision for me, I would think. Trey Edson gets himself rolling now, 14.3 seconds. You could spend a good 35 seconds on the pit lane, as we've seen from Trey Edson. Good 34.3 second stop, actually. He got a little fight going on behind him as well. I don't know if that's for position. That is for position. That's a battle for 10th place back there with Bobby Terrell and Jason Jacoby. Jacoby, I believe, on fresh tires, so this battle should be over relatively quickly if that's the case.
And this is one of the things that can also often happen during the pit road cycle. Get the leaders out there on fresh tires around slower traffic. And you see the way Jacoby's able to just drive right around the outside of Bobby Terrell in that muscle melt machine. You see he's going to just pick that throttle up and pretty much going to be all right, adios Jacoby. And out in front, everything's pretty much single loop filed itself out. So kind of the only thing to really watch here is when is Mike Kelly going to end up coming down on towards pit road for his scheduled pit stop. Also, just for note, David Comstock was able to keep that race lead over Brandon Bowie and EJ O'Rourke and all the drivers that ended up coming down pit road a little bit earlier. And we're not going to have any crazy strategies here today. Mike Kelly's just going to call it a couple laps later than everyone else, and that 2 car is peeled off onto pit road. And I think that's pretty much the entire field we've seen more or less come down on towards the lane after Kelly drives his way through. So a little bit disappointing. I would have wanted to see some interesting strategy from someone, but everyone's making it 2 stops here tonight.
Yeah, that seems to be a popular call all the way around, and it's, of course, could be that domino effect playing in as well. You know, you see, like, I mean, you actually see this in real life too. You know, you see one driver come down, everybody tends to come down, and that's all it really takes. And I think that's what's happening here. You know, you have a couple guys are coming down, and then everybody else maybe changes their strategy to try to adjust the sort of thing so they can keep their positions. You know, might actually have had maybe a guy or two try to go for an undercut, and of course that didn't work, because we actually have Anthony DeBarro going really wide on the exit there, along with Chad Coleman actually do the exact same thing. Then both of them got loose under braking. Actually, no, Anthony DeBarro just drove him way too deep.
Something we keep seeing is guys really struggling getting it in, and DeBarro so deep on the brakes, peels off a little bit wide, as does Chad Coleman.
Mike Kelly, I just saw, actually just got shunted off by Anthony DeBarro in turn 3. That was, of course, a little while ago, where you're seeing that up on your screens right now. That is a bit of an interesting scenario, to say the least. It looked like Kelly was just coming out of the pits, and now that's all gone. DeBarro seemed to have locked it up and just drove it in way too hard. I don't know what to think about that one, though, Randy.
Pretty much exactly, I think, how it happened. The 27 car, I think, just saw an open door and tried to pounce through it and just drove that car way too deep in, locked up and pushed wide. So we're starting to see this again here, Nolan, where we saw it at the start of the race, where people were on really sticky, fresh new tires for a lap or so, and they were good. But once you got to lap 3, lap 4, where that grip just starts peeling away, we get to the point where drivers really start struggling and making mistakes, and Anthony DeBarro has just hit that point on his set of tires, really, and we've seen him now twice in really the same 2 corners make 2 big mistakes, once just plowing wide through turn 1, and then again making a big dive up underneath Mike Kelly trying to pick a spot up. So let's see how they end up going through the rest of this run. Jason Barham, by the way, checking in on this fight. This is Nelson Rivera in it, as well as that 99 car of Tommy Ryan. And Nelson Rivera is actually going to get a run up the inside. I believe that 83 car picked up a slowdown going through the bus stop chicane. So Jason Barham is going to be going the wrong way in a hurry here.
And that is unfortunate. It did look like that's what happened. It looked like it was happening in the 3rd quarter of the bus stop chicane. And it's not that common to see you pick up a slowdown penalty in the 2nd half of the chicane. You know, it's just such an easy place to overshoot. You're trying to get on the power as quickly as you can because the exit of that bus stop chicane is just so crucial. You can lose sometimes up to like 2-3 seconds on the car in front of you if you do it wrong. And of course, we just saw Barham drop all the way back now, leaving Nelson Riviera and Tommy Ryan to fight way ahead of him.
Only a quick peek. I actually think the situation, I don't think Barham's actually come down on towards pit road yet. And I think that's why they were behind him. And I think he was merely letting them through is why he was so slow. As he continues to cruise around the racetrack. Nelson Rivera has been able to stretch a little bit of a gap over Tommy Ryan, but that number 99 Camaro with Northern Tool and Equipment colors is going to actually reel that gap in as they head through the horseshoe. A couple different lines being taken through that particular hairpin as Mustang's going to lead them through the second of the two horseshoes. Of course, the international one a little bit more famous. That's one you would normally consider the second corner on the racetrack as they head off towards corners number 1 and 2 of the NASCAR Oval and head their way back down towards the bus stop chicane. So keeping an eye out. Our race leaders have really spread themselves thin here. E.J. O'Rourke has managed to actually stretch himself a nice little gap in that third spot. A bit of a gaggle between O'Rourke, Johnson, and Edson. And actually, as they say that, E.J. goes really wide at turn 1. And this is going to stack these three right back up. And let's see if there's going to be a bit of a send here. Timothy down in towards turn 3. No, he's going to keep it all on the island. It's actually behind. It's going to be Trey Edson who goes up underneath the 28. I think the 28 sort of facilitated that either by just wanting to let Trey by or by missing the corner. And I think he mostly just missed the corner.
It certainly seemed to be that way to me because he did get on the power a bit early because you saw him like do a little half spin in the back there. So I do believe that he was just making an attempt to get through the corner, and I think he just missed his braking point, it seemed to me. E.J. O'Rourke now, he's going to run a little wide on the last corner. That allows Trey Edson to close right in, and that allowed Trey Edson to actually close in a little bit here, but he loses it all as he pushes a bit wide in NASCAR 1, and that's going to cost him a little bit here in that fight for third place.
Yeah, just going to cost him just a little bit of the head off now down towards that bus stop chicane. They're going to head through it all single file. AJ, of course, comfortably out in front of these two. Seems to just have the speed going through the sort of middle of the racetrack, but still has been struggling in towards turn 1. And actually, Trey Edson is going to get a run coming off that bus stop. And with EJ struggling in towards turn 1, I know those cars are in the same colors and they're probably teammates to a certain extent. If I'm Trey Edson, I'm making some sort of a move or pressuring EJ going into turn 1. Let's see what happens. It's actually Trey's going to pull out of that draft, maybe not wanting to reel in too much time. Let's see, EJ is going to push wide through turn 1 again, but he actually gets it nicely to the apex through the second part of the corner. So just a little bit deep, I think, maybe through the first part, but still decently held that time for EJ. Probably one of his better trips through turn 1 the whole race thus far.
These guys, they can improve throughout the race, and I actually do believe I just saw Jonathan Lockhart go off a little bit at turn.
It seemed to be that case going through turn 1. He's a little bit wide. Mike Kelly ended up putting him, I think, a lap down because of that. So I think that's actually why he was so wide. He was just letting the quicker traffic through. You see in that bright pink Cartoon Network Powerpuff Girls sponsored car, the 27 Coors Light car now ahead of Mike Kelly as they work their way through back up toward the oval. You see Anthony DeBarro and Jason Jacoby involved in this scrap as well as the two. Go up on NASCAR 1 and 2, they will peel right on back as Mike Kelly and Jason Jacoby, they will continue their fight. Kelly will actually pick that spot up from Jacoby, who's had a terrible lap, dropping 2 positions here in just a couple of corners in this same lap even. So not exactly the way Jacoby would want this race to go. DeBarro's going to be loving this though, because with Kelly picking the spot up on Jacoby, Mike Kelly's been able, DeBarro's been able to put a little bit of a time between himself and Mike Kelly, but as I say that, a little bit of a hiccup from DeBarro going through the bus stop, and that's going to allow Mike to get a big run from that bus stop chicane all the way in towards in towards turn 1. the 27 car of DeBarro has a slight top end deficiency here following that little mistake through the chicane, and Mike Kelly will have the run. Willie slotted up the inside in towards turn 1. This is the battle for 7th place, and he sends it deep. Will he be able to hold the center of the corner is going to be the question. He gets to the first part of it, really locking it up, sliding the car all around, and he'll just about be able to hold that in the 2. So well held there by Mike Kelly to hold himself into that position. But now Anthony DeBarro, he's going to see the way that Mike Kelly just drove that car, and he should know that those tires are going to be really overworked on that 2 machine. Down now in towards the second of the 2 horseshoes, Anthony DeBarro trying to just keep up here with this little scrap. And you know what? I think with the way this is going, we're approaching half distance in this event. Haven't gone to one of these yet. I don't think we've gone to one of these all season. Let's go to a little bit of RaceSpotTV fan immersion. Let's ride on board at the moment with the 27 of Anthony DeBarro as he tries to keep up with Mike Kelly and keep this fight alive. And as he heads through the tri-oval in the plaid and denim overalls, Anthony DeBarro will get just past halfway in this race, running somewhat comfortably inside of that top 10. And with that, let's go down your current running order in this race as they are just over halfway. It is still the 42 of David Comstock, up 2 spots from where he started, who comfortably leads this race approximately 8 seconds over the second place runner of Brandon Bowie. Trey Edson probably having the run of the day, plus 15 spots from 18th on the grid, currently up to 3rd, but he is a full 17.5 seconds off. Race leader of David Comstock, E.J. O'Rourke, and Timothy Johnston round out that top 5. The likes of Mike Kelly, Anthony DeBarro, who he just spent a few laps on board with, Jason Jacoby, Chad Coleman, Nick Silver, rounding out your top 10. As we get deeper into this field, you see Tommy Ryan, Nelson Rivera, Bobby Terrell, Nick Cohen, and Ben Kilcrease rounding out the top 15. And then as you get deeper down the order, of course, the drivers not having the runs they would like. Brian Boers-Cook, Glenn Campbell, Robert Gillenwater. Everyone here is sort of still having good nights with the likes of Anthony Calatoni and Bobby Whistle, but Jason Barham, Patrick Colby, Scott Simley, Larry Pace, Jonathan Lockhart, and Chris Cabot already all 1 lap down. And then it just gets worse from there for some of these drivers. You have Joey Gattina, Shane Ewing, Randy Yoakum, Jimmy Coleman, and Sean Dower out of this event based on various sorts of trouble. Fights continue out onto that racetrack, though. Trey Edson and E.J. O'Rourke still within a couple of seconds, and of course Mike Kelly and Anthony DeBarro. Nolan, that's pretty much the only fight we have. Is actually Mike Kelly just had a bit of a self-spin as we were going through that quick rundown.
Yes, he certainly did. Quite unfortunately, it was just after that second corner before he jumped onto the road course, or sorry, onto the oval for NASCAR 1 and 2. He got into power a little too early, or maybe he just got on the power a little too hard, and actually pushed himself off the racetrack on the driver's right, so went straight from the left to the right, managed to keep it under control, did lose out on 7th place, but no doubt he is going to be looking to reel in Anthony DeBarro once more.
And that's what they're going to be looking for. The problem is he's lost a little bit of time. But that said, he's actually not very far back. So for Mike Kelly, after that little bit of a hiccup, not really the worst thing in the world. You see that Coors Light machine actually is all over the place as he heads down in towards the horseshoe, coming back up onto the oval. So the driver of the 27 may be starting to struggle just a little bit. And I think this actually shouldn't be too much of a surprise here, Nolan, because we're only about 5 laps out from this second sequence of pit stops. And even then, some people might call it a little bit earlier and come down somewhere really within the next couple laps. I think the window kind of opens really now, actually, about lap 25, maybe a little bit further on towards 27, 28 is when you would typically want to come down. But you can start coming down pretty much any time now if you really chose.
You certainly can. Now, the question is, if they do come down now, will this mean a possible 3-stop race for a bunch of these drivers? Because for now, it seems that the 2-stop strategy is definitely the way to go. But remember, like, we still have 20 laps to go next time the leader crosses the start-finish line. And the first pit stop run we saw was around laps 12 to 15. This would mean the second pit stop run would be between like laps 25 through 28. That means that there could potentially still be one more round of pit stops left. And the question is, how many drivers do you think might need that 3rd pit stop?
I don't think any of them. I don't think there's any way that we actually end up with this being a 3-stop race, as some of your drivers deal with some lap traffic. But Timothy Johnson and E.J. O'Rourke, they've gone this far. Of course, I mean, it's just sort of, you look at when everyone came down pit road, lap 15, 16, 17, you're going to pit then, and then you're going to pit somewhere around lap 30, lap 30 something, and then you're going to go to the end from there. So I don't think we're going to see anyone pushing the 3-stop.
I feel that it's like a slim possibility, but again, it's a slim possibility, so not a full thing. It's just like one of those little ideas that I'll be keeping at the back of my mind throughout the race until about, I don't know, maybe 9 laps to go or so. That's probably when that thought will finally fade. As you can see, we saw Mike Kelly down in that right-hander. He did get a bit of a run and almost tagged the back of Anthony DeBarro, but lost out on that ground now, especially as they hit the oval. And this oval section here, this is where you can lose a lot of time. And if you lose the draft for the car in front of you here, well, good luck trying to get back up to them. You better be really good at the road course or hope that your opponent spins out in the road course, or they're going to be just about gone for the race.
Yeah, it really can be a struggle if you know, you just have one of those mistakes and they're pretty much just gone, done, dusted off in the distance, and there's not much you can do. However, with us having pretty much a series that seems, I would say, for the most part, inexperienced on the road courses with a lot of the mistakes that we've seen here tonight, Nolan, shouldn't necessarily give up hope, because we've not seen, I think, a single one of these drivers have really a mistake-free run. You know, we've seen so many cars have little half spins and half scares. David Comstock's really the only one who's had a picture-perfect quiet race, maybe, and even then, I don't think even then is that really arguable, and I think we've seen that car even have a couple of struggling moments here thus far today. So as DeBarro is actually going to drive it down a little deep on, Mike Kelly's going to drive it down a little deep on Anthony DeBarro and allow him to reel in a little bit of room due to getting it around Scott Simley. We also have the fight opening up in front as well between Timothy Johnston and E.J. O'Rourke. That is actually the fight for fourth, and Timothy Johnston has just picked that spot up.
Yeah, Timothy Johnson picked the spot up. Will he be able to hang on to the spot, though? Because that NASCAR oval, it's coming up, and if you pass somebody right near that, oh boy, could the draft ever come back to haunt you going into the bus stop chicane. We're really going to see here, though, can E.J. O'Rourke get the draft? He certainly has it. The question is it enough to catch him by the bus stop chicane? I'm not sure. I don't think it'll be enough to get to him by the bus stop chicane, but if he can get a good drive out, he should be able to get him by the time they hit turn one again.
Definitely think you're right. Let's see what happens through the bus stop. Timothy Johnston's a little bit wider through the first part. That's going to allow EJ to tuck nicely up against the rear spoiler. I take that back as EJ fights all sorts of oversteer. They're going to be roughly even as they reel off through NASCAR 3 and 4. The 41, though, has just that little bit of draft and is reeling in that number 28 of Timothy Johnston little by little as they head now in towards the tri-oval. And I don't think EJ is going to be close enough. There's not that much of real estate left before they're going to be on the brakes, and they'll be hitting them right about now as they start going down through the gears for turn one. And I think that's one of the things we've seen here. We talk about the draft here always. And we see the 88 of Brandon Bowie peel off on towards pit road and believe this is just his scheduled pit stop. We saw him be one of the early comers going down on towards pit road through that initial run, and we see that once again. It's going to have to be a slightly longer final stint from him, but only about 18 laps. So he did 18 laps through that, or excuse me, he did 14 laps through the first stint, and he did 13 laps through the second. So it's going to be a little bit of a longer run than what he's done thus far, getting to the end of the race.
Now we actually saw E.J. O'Rourke actually won that battle for fourth place because Timothy Johnston has gone clean off, as you've just seen. Massive oversteer and then overcorrected, almost overcorrected the second time. Luckily managed to keep the car and hang on to it, but that'll allow E.J. O'Rourke back up into fifth place, and he is just going to charge away now. And Timothy Johnston is, of course, going to have Patrick Colby to work through, but Colby's going to let him through nice and clean.
It's actually sort of a disaster there for Timothy Johnston, because even though Colby made that easy, I think Timothy still lost a little bit of time due to that lap traffic, and it's now gone from a nose-to-tail fight to being separated by about 3 seconds out there on the racetrack between the closest we really have here between Mike Kelly and Anthony DeBarro as they get ready to head onto that Daytona super stretch. You take a peek of Timothy Johnston with Patrick Colby on behind him. DeBarro is still dealing with Mike Kelly. This has been one of the most consistent fights we've had all evening long. Let's see, when do some of our other drivers end up coming down on towards pit road? David Comstock says this is not the lap. Trey Edson, he's not going to come down on pit road this lap either. What about Timothy Johnston? He's sort of the next, actually no, I take that back. He's not the next one in line, but regardless, he's not going to come down. So it's only Brandon Bowie, only driver opting to come down pit road amongst your race leaders this time. Everyone else keeping that thing out on the racetrack a little bit longer. Now, is that good news for Brandon Bowie, or is that bad news?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, it means one of two things, and it will only mean one of two things. Either option one, he tried to go for an undercut, in which case that could actually play out very well if the leader, which, by the way, is still David Comstock, comes in within the next lap or two. Or he thought he was going to go for an undercut, but it turns out he misjudged, and he's just cost himself the entire race.
Definitely something to potentially think about here as Mike Kelly is trying to reel in that Coors Light machine of Anthony DeBarro. Really been the fight we've been watching most of the day, is that silver and red car versus this black, white, and blue machine. Absolutely beautiful colors of Mike Kelly's car, I have to say. Kind of a unique color scheme we don't typically see I take that back. Those colors have really come on the last handful of years. I mean, the colors still look very good, but as is typical, we sort of tend to get color trends in sim racing. And, you know, I remember, you know, dating back almost 4 or 5 years ago now, it just seems like someone will come up with a cool color scheme, and then people will slowly start transitioning over there and changing it. The only team that have really kind of stayed true with their color scheme is actually the Coanda group with their white, purple, and orange.
Yeah, the Coanda Sim Sport team, they're of course one of the really huge names right now. They have their driver Martin Kronke, who won the Irish World Championship Grand Prix Series of 2018. I am trying to look for the field, and we got a fight closing in really quickly actually for P18 right now, and actually as well as that, EJ O'Rourke pulling down to the pit road with Timothy Johnston right behind them. So your fight for third is also pulling onto pit road. It's going to be a fight in the pits now.
The number of drivers on pit road as Bobby Wetzel was really wide at turn 1. That was in that fight in 18th spot, and there was no pressure being put on Bobby there by Robert Gillenwater. Bobby just pretty much made that mistake all on his own. So, and still struggling. You see him going through turn 3 super, super wide, as we're now seeing that 8th place runner, Timothy Johnston, who's just on pit road. Mike Kelly dealing with that 88 car of Brandon Bowie, I believe is who that was, coming through on screen. And that is indeed exactly who that was, and that was a pass for position. So Bowie's going to pick that position up. Mike Kelly's going to continue to fall backwards and go the wrong way.
That is just really unfortunate for Mike Kelly. He's actually seen Patrick Colby just went off the track trying to let this fight through. So he took a little bit of a run there. I wonder, did he lock up the brakes? No, he
peeled off. I think he just peeled off to facilitate the pass.
And that could definitely be the case. We saw Brandon Bowie had a little bit of a wiggle, but definitely made it work as he got on the inside of Anthony DeBarro, and now he's has that little lead there over this little pack here. And this is where things could get a little interesting, especially coming into through the next couple of laps. We're going to look back now to your battle for 16th place with Bill Kilcrease and Nicholas Cohan. That is the fight for 16th, less than 2/10 apart. So the question is, how will this play in as they go over through the road course section once more?
A little bit of Ford versus Toyota as Ben Kilcrease in that GoPro car is going to head off in towards turn 1. And actually, deep move from Nick Cohen. I think that was too deep. So Ben Kilcrease, he may have been a little bit frightened in the rearview mirror as we see the 10 of Trey Edson peel on towards pit road. The 10 car may have been, or excuse me, the 00 car may have been a little bit startled in the rear view, but it all ends up working out for him as that big mistake from Nicholas Cohen is going to give Kilcrease just enough time to be comfortable. That said, Cohen seems to have the quicker car, has reeled him in a couple of times now. So as they head now through the kink, let's see, does Cohen get the run? No! He's going to be all over the place, and that was well helped by Nick Cohen. Nearly a race-ending incident there for him. You do not have a spin through the kink and not have it pretty much end your run. So for him to hold that slide was a difference probably between being able to finish this thing and finding himself down in the garage with a heavily damaged car.
In other news, for the pit stop run, we've had David Comstock. He just came down onto pit road, and he's, of course, finished his stop. Brandon Bowie, his undercut word, because Brandon Bowie actually seems to be in the lead right now. So that undercut for Brandon Bowie really worked out for him. Yes, I've just confirmed Brandon Bowie is now in first. So he's going to have a serious fight on his hands now. We could have a battle heating up for the win of this race.
We very well could, but it's important to note with the extra 3 laps on the tires, Brandon Bowie from here on out will probably consistently be 1 to 2 tenths slower than David Comstock. That's likely playing in the back of David's mind right now, and it'd certainly be smart if it were. As they work through the bus stop chicane, things are now going to get interesting inside these final 15 laps because Comstock will be quicker, but it shouldn't be so much quicker here, Nolan, that he'll be able to just breeze right on through and just pretty much pick up an easy win.
No, certainly not. And Brandon Bowie, he's made his way up 4 spots since the start of this race, and now he's up to first place with that. And he's probably thinking right now, you know what? If you want this lead, you're going to have to take it from me by force. And I think that's how this battle is going to play out. Comstock's definitely going to catch up to him. I have no doubt in my mind about that as he closes in a lot through turn 1, actually. Down out of turn number 1. This could actually be all over now coming into this next corner. what will happen here? Will Comstock try to go for the move around the outside? He does. He's going to try to cut it in deep here. Can he get on the inside of Bowie? He does. Bowie runs wide on the exit, and now Comstock is side by side with Bowie. Into the left-hand kink they go.
Bowie actually lifted really early, making that work, so I think he realized that as much quicker as David Comstock was, I think Comstock was faster than both him and I imagined he would be. He's just going to let David on through, and he's going to hold on to second place. That's pretty much the decision for the race win. Kind of made up, done, and dusted here as David is now peeling off onto the oval unless Bowie can make something of this and can keep onto the back of that 42 car. But the way that David's hitting a huge run, no, I take that back. He's already nearly 30 car lengths ahead of that double eight. This is all David Comstock. All he has to do is keep it out, keep it on the black stuff, keep it from hitting the white wall on the right and that blue wall on the left.
Yeah, those are the two most dangerous things you can hit right now. And if you do any one of those, it will for sure end his race. So he's working his way up to Bobby Terrell now. Will that impact his run? It could have possibly actually impacted his run because he was right on the exit of that bus stop chicane, but unfortunately for Brandon Bowie, not nearly enough to get the run.
Yeah, not nearly enough, but even still, that's not going to be enough regardless. He needs a lot more than that. He needs he needs David Comstock to actually have some sort of a spin or a mistake. Looking up and down the field, though, I don't really see any other fights at the moment. Everyone's really spread themselves out as I look through. Of course, with the pit stop sequence, there's still some cars, I believe, that probably owe us pit stops down on towards pit road, but for the most part, the entire order, the entire running order is in the order it's in, and this might get shaken up, and Anthony DeBarro picks up a slowdown at the bus stop.
Oh dear, how many slowdowns has it been for Anthony DeBarro now? It's been a good bunch now that I think of it. This is what, his third slowdown penalty now? So absolute disaster for Anthony DeBarro in his race. That is just so unfortunate for him to see. Just another slowdown penalty. Let me tell you, in an oval, that's one of the things you never want to see, is just that big flashing sign that says, you've got a slowdown penalty, you need to let him through. That's one of the things you never, ever want to see, especially exiting such a crucial corner.
Yeah, I mean, and especially going through that corner at the bus stop chicane, one of the biggest things is actually it's not just knowing how to avoid getting slowdowns and, consistently not getting slowdowns, but when you get them, it's understanding how to serve them, give up the least amount of time. And I think we've seen that a couple of times through this event. Those drivers that they pick up that slowdown penalty, Nolan, and they kind of just stomp on the brakes immediately from the times we've seen it. And that's not necessarily the best way you want to go about it. You sort of want to serve it over the course of the straightaway rather than do it all in one sort of big chunk and then accelerate from there to the end of the straightaway. And I think we've seen drivers give up a little bit more time than, say, some more experienced road course guys would be giving up. But regardless, we're still currently watching that 10 car of Trey Edson, who's currently just having a nice, quiet jog out there in that third spot.
Well, absolutely. There's definitely better ways than to just stamp on the brakes, and I found this out the hard way. Since the bus stop chicane, if you get a slowdown penalty there, the easiest solution I can think of, just run right up as close to the outside wall as you could get without hitting it, because that alone is going to allow the clock to take down a lot. If not that, then just brake a little earlier for turn one and all the other corners of the road course until gradually it runs out on its own, or don't be as aggressive on the gas. That's going to be one of my best pieces of advice that I could give if you get a slowdown penalty at the bus stop chicane in particular. And Trey Edson looking really relaxed out there. He's been having a really quiet run. It's almost like he's running a time trial out there. Meanwhile, though, further up with Jason Barham and Bobby Whistle, things are not quite so peaceful.
Things are really heating up around these guys. You also have Jason Jacoby, who's about a lap ahead of these two, moving himself through this little field. So Bobby Wetzel is going to do everything he can to actually separate here from Jason Barham while Jason Jacoby is doing this. And he's done a good job thus far. He just now needs to hope that Jacoby catches him at an ideal time. He takes a very wide line there through the International Horseshoe, but that's okay. Sets him up with a nice straight exit here on the run down in towards the King. Now, when will Jason Jacoby opt to make this move? It might happen in towards this upcoming right-hand hairpin, depending on how early Bobby is on the brakes. No, not yet. Maybe coming onto the oval when this Valvoline car can expect that stream machine to make the move up the inside. And let's actually see. Jason's sort of in a questionable point right now of whether you do it or don't. He's going to opt not to. So everything's pretty much going to work out for Bobby Witzel. This is the best time you could ever get passed by a quicker car as Robert Gillenwater he pulls off to the side of the track and lets those drivers through as well. I'm not sure if that was by design. Doesn't look like it. He actually just got that car really, really wide, missed that corner, and pretty much sat there and had to wait for those guys to exit, or excuse me, to come around and get on past him. So Gillenwater's still having a couple of mistakes, unfortunately for him, as Jacoby still yet to make that pass.
I'm a bit surprised that Jacoby hasn't made that pass yet, especially going onto the oval. That's when it would definitely be the ideal time to make the pass. It looks like Bobby Whistle though might make it from here. No, he's going to come down right in front of Jacoby. I'm really beginning to question when Jacoby will make that maneuver, because Jason Jacoby certainly is, he can be a bit of an interesting driver. He's actually going to make the pass around the outside. That's, all right, that's a little unusual, but sure, it can work if it's played right. They're side by side into turn one. He's going to back out of it, and he's still stuck behind Bobby Westall. Now, I'm wondering at this point, is Jason Jacoby fine with this, or is he might be getting a little bit impatient sooner or later?
Well, the thing is for Jason is that he doesn't have anyone really within him, or excuse me, around him that he'd be fighting with. I mean, the next car at the racetrack is Anthony Navarro, and Navarro is lapping 3 seconds per lap quicker at the moment. Chad Coleman is fairly close behind, but there's only about a half second or so difference there as well. So if you're Jason Jacoby, I think it's smart to not be too aggressive trying to pick up the spot.
We've actually just had to spin with Jonathan Lockhart through the bus stop chicane, it would seem, on the exit. Maybe a little bit of an moment of overcorrection there. He was doing a little bit of a donut in the infield from what I can see, so it looks like that's exactly what happened. We're going to get a look at a replay here as he comes down through the braking zone for the bus stop chicane. Now, what happened to Jonathan Lockhart? Did he get on the gas a bit early, or did he just cut through? Yeah, he got the power way too hard and just slid right off into the infield.
That was a very, very easy mistake to make there from Jonathan Lockhart. Lucky for him, didn't really end up hitting anything, so he's going to just keep that car cruising on towards the end of this thing, as we are currently working inside of the final 10 laps and pretty much running our way out of battles to really talk about. We had EJ and Timothy Johnston there within a second, but a pretty distant second that we're pretty much seeing here. We also see Ben Kilcrease and Nick Cohen about a second and a half. That's really the situation on track up and down the field. Everyone within about 1 second here, 2 seconds there, maybe 3 or 4. A couple bigger gaps, of course. Like you can see Brandon Bowie and Trey Edson, 16-second gap there. But everyone's kind of situated themselves and is running sort of on their own island here as we approach the end of this race.
And Nicholas Cohen actually, his fight's not over yet. You saw that he's lost a lot of ground. That's because he suffered a massive bite of oversteer in the corner right as you jump onto the oval. Luckily managed to, of course, save that car. That's just been a trend that we've seen up and down the field throughout this entire race. Everybody's had like that little moment you pushed it a little too hard, and that was another moment for Nicholas Cohen, unfortunately.
Yeah, a little bit of a, let's say, not so comfortable moment for him, but he's still working his best here, trying to get to the end of this thing, and we're still watching Ben Kilcrease. And of course, after that moment with Cohen, Ben has put a lot of ground between himself and that 21 car. Now just peel off toward the start-finish. They're going to start their lap number 36. They're actually a lap down. The race leader is currently working lap number 37. As you see the 42 car of David Comstock just a little ways up the road. You also see E.J. O'Rourke checking in with him. Timothy Johnson we actually see on the screen, but EJ 1.7 seconds up the road from him. It's been a bit up and down race here for Timothy. Had a couple of incidents, but he's really been able to sort of smooth those out and find his way in towards the top 5 when he needs to be, and be able, you know, especially at a time that he can kind of just cruise through these towards the end of this race.
Yeah, it's been a very relaxing race for a lot of these guys that have been up through the midfield. Not so much though for EJ O'Rourke. We've talked about him quite a few times in this race, actually, especially since remember, EJ O'Rourke, he was your pole sitter, and he's back in 4th place now. That's just because of so many mistakes in what could only be described as a disastrous start to O'Rourke's race. Very, very unfortunate for that 28 machine. He is holding his own against Timothy Johnson, though you actually see he's now pulled a gap of over 2 seconds now on Johnston. And I do believe, though, and actually I will quickly say, excuse me, as that is not EJ O'Rourke that's on screen. That is Timothy Johnston. And what I mean to say is EJ O'Rourke is in the 41 machine, not the 28.
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing, of course, but as EJ works his way now up just out in front. Like I said, this gap is still close. It's a couple of seconds between EJ and Timothy, but still not really within striking distance the way they've been kind of peeling lap times off and been so even with one another.
Not just yet. I think that this is kind of the way things are going to be settling in now. You know, you're going to have the top 5 that are pretty much guaranteed to finish where they are right now, unless, of course, you have a bit of an incident. Actually, EJ O'Rourke might have just had a slowdown penalty because that looked awfully close. He's a little slow coming off the chicane as well, so I'm not sure. Yes, it looks like that was a slowdown penalty because he's running high, so it looked like he jumped the chicane. That could all change right now because that will allow Timothy Johnson to get a bit of a more significant run on EJ O'Rourke, as O'Rourke suffers from another mistake. But I don't think it's too much, though, that it'll change the outcome of this race this far.
I did hear EJ lifting towards turn 1 pretty early, and he's really wide through turn 1, so still struggling as EJ. And that gap's going to come down in favor of that number 28 car, so still very relevant is Timothy Johnson here applying that pressure. They head now in towards the International Horseshoe. So for Timothy, that may have just seen something open up. You see that EJ have a little bit of a mistake, and you reel in a bunch of time and not a particularly long period of time, and maybe you can make something of this.
You never know. You just got to keep the pressure up and hope that you force the other driver into a mistake. And speaking of another fight that's going on, the fight for 13th place with Bill Kilcrease and Nicholas Cohen. We've seen Cohen, he's made a couple of mistakes himself throughout the race, but he's really close now. He's reeled in that double zero machine. So I do think we're going to have a real fight on our hands if he could get a good exit coming off into NASCAR 3 and 4. Didn't quite happen the way he was hoping, though, clearly. But at this rate, I feel like he'll close in about a lap or so, and then we'll have ourselves a real fight to watch.
It's going to be interesting to see here as Ben Kilcrease heads his way now, coming across start-finish straight. Nick Cohen has dropped back a little bit. Ben's way earlier, or a bit earlier on the brake. Going to turn 1, you see that on the screen as Cohen just reels in so much time, but let's see how that Ford Mustang gets off. So we actually one car way off in the kitty litter, and that's where he paced at turn 1. Where did the spin actually originally? I'm not sure what exactly happened to Larry. I think he ended up kind of getting loose and going wide at turn 1. I think he got a little bit lost at where he was, nearly rejoining the oval, which is where you would not have wanted to have that. You check back in with him, he's sort of having a secondary incident. That's exactly what happened. He sort of started peeling off towards the regular part of the oval, and when realized, oh, I probably don't want to cut this much of the track, and opted to end up spinning that thing back around and doing just bring it back to where he was on track. As Nick Silver and Tommy Ryan have also sorted themselves out very closely here on track. So that's a fight between 10th and 11th.
Yeah, fight for the top 10 here, and that could also change things as well. As Nick Silver trying to go on the defense against Tommy Ryan into turn number 1. How will this play out? Will Tommy Ryan be one of those drivers that can just get a good jump in the road course? I'm not quite sure, but he's really close on the back through turn number 1. Now coming up to the International Horseshoe for the 39th time today for these drivers. Will he be able to get the run on the exits? This is going to take a wider of an entry line so we can go for the over-under into the left-hand kink. There he goes. He's on the inside, but it's not nearly enough to get a run on Nick Silver.
Yeah, but Nick has to be nervous here because Tommy Ryan has been lapping about 7 to 8 tenths per lap quicker. He is there. So if you're Tommy Ryan, you don't want to get too aggressive. That said, he sort of shows the nose here down in towards this corner, this deep right-hand hairpin at turn number 5, and now they get themselves situated for turn 6. Tommy Ryan just has to let this play out. He has more than enough time to end up picking up this move before the end. Before the end of this race. Last thing you want to do if you're Tommy Ryan is try to get over aggressive and try to rush making this pass, especially when you're that much quicker than that car in front of you.
Oh, absolutely, and this is just another one of those cases where Tommy Ryan's just got to be extremely patient because it's one of those passes where he is faster, but he will end up being held. He's going to end up being held up by Nick Silver at some point or another, and you really have to set the pass up. And I think that's something that Tommy Ryan is going to have to do. Looking back up front, on board now with Timothy Johnston, in. I believe that is still the fight for 5th place up there. It indeed is with EJ O'Rourke. He has closed the gap again, and they're closing in on the lap car of Jonathan Lockhart. So will that lap traffic play into Timothy Johnston's favor here?
It's going to be interesting to see. EJ is going to get a decent run. How does Jonathan Lockhart deal with this? We've seen this Powerpuff Girls car have a couple of interesting offs, and it might benefit Johnston just a little bit. Actually, maybe not. It didn't really hold EJ up too much, but dealing with a bit of oversteer here is that Hippie's Paint Shop machine, and EJ is going to duck down to the bottom of the racetrack, and I think that may have brought it may have brought Johnston into the draft range just a little bit more. So for EJ O'Rourke, maybe a little bit of the nerves starting to work here, but it's not too big of a game changer, is that lap car.
EJ O'Rourke, of course, just trying to hang on to 4th place here, not wanting to drop back to get to 5th, because of course that would just be turned over to this cake. But he gets a terrible exit out of the bus stop chicane, and that will allow Timothy Johnston to get him. They're now side by side, a little bit of door banging, I believe, coming in through NASCAR 3 and 4. That just about ended both their races. They're going to be side by side now. Johnston does have the run, and he's going to clear EJ O'Rourke around the outside in what was another mistake that cost EJ O'Rourke another position.
Great move there by Timothy Johnston. Great opportunistic move as well, as we're inside the final 6 laps to go as EJ struggles. Continue through turn 1. He's going to lose 10, 12 car lengths on Timothy Johnston, maybe even make it 15 by the time they get here down in towards turn 3. And now if you're EJ O'Rourke, you have to start thinking of not only that car in front of you of Timothy Johnston you maybe want to try to pick up, you need to honestly think about Mike Kelly, the car who's a little bit further down the road behind you, because any more mistakes like that, and suddenly that 2 machine is going to be making a move potentially right on your rear bumper.
That is just the thing that EJ O'Rourke wants to prevent from happening, and no doubt he's going to be fighting as hard as he can to prevent that from happening, of course. Mike Kelly, though, he's keeping a very optimistic look, it would seem, because he's really kept the pace on throughout the entire race. As actually, we've had an incident. Jonathan Lockhart goes off and tags the wall, and that forces Mike Kelly wide and just ruined all the ground that Mike Kelly just made up. And actually, Kelly himself also got a little bit loose throughout that little section there. I don't believe he tagged Jonathan Lockhart, though.
No, he didn't, and that wasn't the worst. He lost a good chunk of time, but it's still... actually, I take that back. He lost a little bit more time than I initially thought. So that's sort of maybe a killer there for Mike Kelly, who maybe had hopes of picking up a spot late in this race, as Timothy Johnston is still doing his best to keep EJ O'Rourke in the rearview mirror. This is going to be where you need to be busy looking at that rearview mirror, though, because we've seen EJ all race long just dive up the inside going into turn 1, and if this is going to be a point that he can do it, this is the time when he's going to want to. Let's see if EJ sends it down the inside. It would be from way far back, so I don't think it's going to happen, but we've seen that car is the latest on the brakes of anybody, and sometimes he makes it, sometimes he doesn't, but you see just how much time he reels in on that braking zone into 1.
This right now is the closest battle to watch right now, and apart from these little hiccups that he's had, I do believe that EJ O'Rourke does have the overall speed throughout the rest of these corners. It's just that bus stop chicane and turn 1 where he loses so much time. And if he can get those nailed down, I do believe that he's got excellent pace to catch Timothy Johnston. We actually saw how much he closed in at the International Horseshoe the last time they went through here, as EJ O'Rourke closes in a little bit more, gets his right side tires into the sand, just a little bit on the inside of the corner there. Mentioned to keep it, hang on to it though, without getting the slowdown. That would, of course, be the last possible thing they wanted to see, as actually Timothy Johnston runs a little wide on the exit of the corner, spinning you back onto the old, but it suffers some massive oversteer. That could play perfectly into EJ O'Rourke's favor right here.
So the fight for 4th picks up after Timothy Johnston picks the throttle way too early, coming up on the NASCAR 1 and 2. Now they stream back down here at the Daytona Superstretch in towards the bus stop. EJ O'Rourke not picking up the amount of time you may have initially expected, but I think just calmly waiting in the wings there is EJ O'Rourke, and you see the way he screams through the bus stop. Timothy Johnston just not having to run through that corner. He's maybe a little bit better off on the exit, but EJ probably reels in about 7 to 8 tenths just through that bus stop chicane alone, as they now work through NASCAR in 3 and 4 and on towards the tri-oval. EJ O'Rourke is closer now than he was last time. We saw how much space EJ reeled in on the brakes, crossing start finish, beginning lap number 43 of 46. So 4 laps to go, and EJ actually a little bit more patient on the brakes that time through turn 1.
Patience is the key here, and that's something we keep coming back to, is the fact that you do need to be patient in setting up these passes. You have to find the next move, as actually EJ O'Rourke, the patience just about leaving him as he turns in almost a little too early, suffers a little wiggle, but manages to keep his foot on it as he chases down Timothy Johnson. This could be one of those fights that is decided on the final lap of the race. I do wonder, though, if EJ O'Rourke can complete the pass to Timothy Johnson, can he keep the pace up enough so that he can stay in front of Timothy Johnston? That's going to be one of the key factors of this fight here, because if you pass him in the oval section, EJ, Timothy's just going to be able to get the jump on you immediately because of that draft.
Definitely seems to be the situation, as these guys are going to head now up onto the oval. So once again, Timothy Johnston doing his best, trying to just keep EJ out behind him. He's done good work thus far, keeping the mistakes to a minimum here at the late stage of the race. We've seen a couple for sure. Now as they head down in towards that bus stop chicane, what is EJ going to do? He's deeper on the brakes once again. Is that going to translate to quicker time through the center of the corner? Yes, it is. EJ absolutely nails the bus stop chicane here on lap number 43. This might open the door. EJ in towards turn 1, but he doesn't get the run coming off the corner. Brian Boris Cook as well. That lap car and that damaged Judge Judy machine up along the outside of the racetrack, trying his best to stay out of the way of this race amongst a couple of your race leaders. Now, as these guys head down towards start finish, EJ's going to poke the nose down to the inside through the tri-oval. It's a shorter path down there, so we'll reel in a little bit of space, and he looks keen on setting it down to the inside, but he backs out of it, not quite close enough. He will only have 3 more attempts at that maneuver.
Pressure's on. We're here with 3 laps to go. As actually Johnson gets really loose, and that will allow EJ O'Rourke to go right through into the International Horseshoe, and the pressure that EJ O'Rourke piled on finally paid off as it forces Timothy Johnston into a mistake that just cost him 4th place. This could get interesting here, though, if Johnston manages to pounce once again in the oval.
Have to wait and see. We've seen EJ succumb to pressure as well. We know he likes to send that car down into turn 1, and we know that he's had problems there in terms of consistency, but he only has to hold on for a couple of laps. Meanwhile, David Comstock, he's going to be coming off the bus stop chicane. He will be getting ready to take that 2 to go signal. They talk about EJ struggling with the consistency. He's wide, coming back out onto the oval. That actually holds Timothy Johnson up a little bit. Doesn't get the run I actually thought Timothy would get. So still a little bit of mind games being played with these guys. ZJ is going to open himself up an extra couple of car lengths here. We know he will have the advantage going down in towards the bus stop chicane. On the brakes now. Actually, it's going to be Timothy Johnston who reels that gap in just a little bit, but not the way that EJ was. EJ, though, still doesn't really open that gap up going through that bus stop chicane either.
Well, they held pretty even throughout that entire bus stop chicane the last time through. They're going to have 2 laps to go at the line, so that means there really only is a good 6 or 7 more chances for Timothy Johnston to work his way up there and pounce. As if you actually see EJ O'Rourke covering that inside line, he really doesn't need to be that far down the track, though. I can understand him wanting to maybe make a couple of attempts where he can. Now, will he lock it up? The pressure does get him a little bit. The back end steps out just a tad. It just barely manages to hang on to that, but of course, Timothy Johnston still being held at bay. Let me tell you, Randy, these drivers have done so well at keeping it under control. As actually, I take that, as I say that somebody makes me eat my words, as Patrick Colby is down into the infield, into the International Horseshoe, and this fight for 4th just passed by. You can see him rejoining the track there in the background.
Patrick Colby ends up succumbing here at the end of the race. I believe he'll be rejoining. Indeed, he does. So not terminal damage here, as we will be paying attention to the checkered flag. This fight between EJ O'Rourke and Timothy Johnston. EJ a little bit sideways as he works through turns number 5 and 6. As we just had a quick shot of David Comstock working his way through the bus stop chicane. He will be on his way towards the tri-oval, getting ready to take this white flag. So for EJ O'Rourke and Timothy Johnston, They know their time is limited here in terms of what they have to work with. For EJ O'Rourke, you have to be thinking, I have to keep Timothy behind me at all costs. And if you're Tim Johnson, you have to be thinking, I need to get around EJ at the soonest possible convenience. In towards the bus stop chicane for the penultimate time for these two. This is where EJ's had the advantage all evening long over that number 28 car. He's going to stretch the gap once again, but the next braking zone has been his weakest all night. Going in towards turn 1, we have seen him continually make mistakes there all race long. Meanwhile, David Comstock, he already has that white flag and is working his way down through the kink inside of the infield. He has lap traffic at a 15-second lead to Brandon Bowie. Everything is smooth there, but what happens with the 41 of EJ O'Rourke right now as he heads off into turn 1 for the final time? He's going to lock up the left side tires, and he's over the white line. This opens the opportunity for the 28 of Timothy Johnston, and Timothy will pick that spot up. Now, if you're EJ O'Rourke, you have that one ace up your sleeve of the bus stop chicane where you've been so much better than the number 28 USAA car all evening long. You just have to hold it smooth. Keep your mind focused. Don't let that mistake through the first corner eat at you as you get ready to go down in towards that ever-important braking zone. Through the kink and now through the second of the two horseshoes for the final time. Timothy Johnston just needs to be calm, cool, and collected here. Try to open up a gap if you think you can, but don't try to force anything. Now through this left-hander for the final time. So tricky. Bumps on the outside. Need to be so careful picking up the throttle. Don't want to spin up the right rear too much. Good job by both drivers, and a slight advantage to the 28 though of Timothy Johnston. But while that's happening, number 42 car, David Comstock, he is in the tri-oval, and he is going to win round number 4 of the Kickass Snacks Sim500 Winter Xfinity Series. But what's going to happen between EJ and Timothy Johnston? EJ is not close enough at the bus stop chicane, so will it be a classic Daytona finish? Working the draft. Johnston is slow coming through the bus stop at the 41. All sorts of oversteer on the grass. He is going to lose so much time, and the number 28 of Timothy Johnston will only get smaller and smaller in the windshield of that 41 car of EJ O'Rourke, and Timothy Johnston will be able, after a late race mistake from EJ, Timothy will hold on to that 4th spot.
Man, is Timothy Johnston ever lucky there that EJ O'Rourke had that happen to him. That is so unfortunate. O'Rourke saw the gap closing through the bus stop chicane and tried. He got a little too eager, just tried for it, and it didn't work out, unfortunately.
Just a little too eager. We've seen that time and time again here at Daytona. We've seen it in the endurance races. We've seen it in sprint races as well. You have to time those moves, and you have to pick your places intelligently. As the field works their way through, we're taking a peek at the 15th car as he comes streaming by to the finish. That's Nick Silver, who is running in the 10th spot, up a couple spots. The only other driver is Tommy Ryan, who has yet to actually finish this thing. So with that, let's go down your post-race results after round 4 here at Daytona. So after 46 laps of racing and 2 pit stops, David Comstock is going to be the driver who dominates this event from 3rd place on the grid. Brandon Bowie will end up in 2nd with Trey Edson in 3rd. Timothy Johnston with that late race pass in 4th. And EJ O'Rourke will round out your top 5. Mike Kelly will be in 6th. Anthony DeBarro, Jason Jacoby, Chad Coleman, and Nick Silver rounding out your top 10. Tommy Ryan is in the 11th spot with Nelson Rivera in 12th. Ben Kilcrease, Nick Cohen, Bobby Terrell, Brian Boris Cook, Glenn Campbell, Bobby Wetzel, Scott Simley, and Robert Gillenwater will round out your top 20. Of course, rounding out the rest of the field, you have Jason Barham, Patrick Colby, Chris Cabot, Jonathan Lockhart, Larry Pace, Anthony Calantoni, Joey Gattina, Shane Ewing, Randy Yoakum, Jimmy Coleman, and Sean Dower. We are going to take a quick break here on RaceSpotTV, and we will have post-race coverage coming at you in just a few minutes. Do not go away. Welcome back here to RaceSpotTV, and after 46 laps of action around the Daytona road course in the Sim500 Kickass Snacks Winter Xfinity Series, it's going to be David Comstock who picks up his second victory on the season, and that's going to be great for him in terms of the points because he lost a few positions coming off of that race at Auto Club. And you know what? Let's just pick up that driver, the number 42, and have a nice little post-race chat with him. Now that we have it, David, what a run it was from you. Starting in that third spot, you had a couple drivers starting in front of you, Anthony DeBarro and EJ O'Rourke. We've seen you have fights with Anthony a few times thus far this season, but basically picked up that position, and you pretty much were out and clear pretty much all race long. Talk me through it around this 46-lap race you had around Daytona.
Yeah, got a decent qualifying there. I kind of was just tippy-toeing a little bit to make sure that I didn't mess up and have to start in the back. Like, unfortunately, my teammate Trey there had to. So, but yeah, just knowing that I was quick as far as race pace went and just trying to time to when I can try to make my move and getting by both of them. And I almost had it at one point there on, I think it was a second or third lap, and they kind of got fighting with each other a little bit and about snuck around them and then had to back off and wait a little bit, but eventually got it and just set my own pace and kind of ran my own race and ran my own strategy pretty much to end out.
Now, talk me through a little bit of the strategy of this race. We saw everyone in fact, go for the two-stopper. Was there any potential for a single stopper here, or did you guys just not have the fuel to go 23, 24 laps?
We didn't have the fuel. We can only go about 20 at most. If you were saving, maybe 21, 22, but that's hard to do here just because it's not like your traditional oval where you can roll off the gas really, let it coast in, maybe shut the motor off, and roll into the corner a bunch and then get back on it. Here you're always constantly on the gas or constantly on the brake, and there's not many spots where you can try to let it coast and save fuel unless you're just letting off way early, which you're going to lose a lot of time by doing that. So the best strategy was just going as hard as you can, manage your tires the best you can to keep the longevity of what you needed for pretty much 15 laps each run is what we were looking at.
We have 3 weeks between this race and the next one due to Christmas and New Year's, and that's we're going to keep things here in Florida. So nice little 3-week vacation down here in Florida. Not bad for the series, but Homestead Miami Speedway is coming up next. What's your sort of input there? How do you think you're going to do?
I like that place. Final halves are usually my strong suit, so Homestead has always been pretty good to me. So hopefully we can go down there and continue on the trends that we've been putting out here lately.
Thanks for joining us there, David. Absolutely fantastic performance there for you. Before we let you go, who gets it done for that number 42 Camaro?
I would like to thank all my teammates at Aftermath Motorsports with Trey Edson, EJ O'Rourke, and Justin Fuller on the box helping us out with strategy tonight. And sponsors in the car, RacingBiz.com. Go to Facebook, search up RacingBiz.com. They hold live auctions every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, so you can go put in some your money in bids and go get some die casts or hero cards or trading cards, pieces of race car, whatever they've got that they're selling there. Go get your money in to go try to win some real cool, unique stuff that they offer every single week. Gary Mercer Trucking, Monster Energy, Jada Lair, JDR Graphics for painting the car, EJ Brakes, Hick and Jicks. Thank you guys for broadcasting. Thanks to all the fans watching, all the friends. Appreciate it. Happy holidays.
There he was, your race winner, David Comstock, wishing everyone a nice, safe, happy holidays. Second place, though, is going to be that number 88 car, Brandon Bowie, coming from 5th on the grid up to 2nd. Mr. Nolan Rempel is going to be stood by with him.
Now, Brandon, you had yourself a pretty decent race, all things considered. You know, you started in 5th place, managed to work your way 3 spots up to 2nd, and for a majority of the race, it looked like you were having yourself a nice little Sunday drive out there.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I didn't have anything for David. I think I might have had a little bit something on the short run, but I was kind of behind EJ and kind of got into him a little bit, so I kind of didn't want to race him dirty or anything like that, so I kind of just put a little pressure on him and just kind of waited. But then by that time, I think David had a 3-second gap. So I never really got to see if I could have hung with him for a little bit, maybe on a short run, and then with just the pit cycles and trying to get in front of him, It just never worked out. But, I mean, all in all, it was a clean race, and I finished second again for the third time.
And one of the things that we took of note earlier in the broadcast, for your second pit stop, it almost looked like you tried to go for an undercut on David Comstock. You went in 3 laps earlier than he did. You actually ended up coming out in front of him on that deal. He did end up getting around you, unfortunately, though, in the end. Could you walk us through what the strategy call was for that?
Sure, yeah. I was just, as I was telling some of the other guys, other drivers, the goal was to hope that he would possibly catch traffic when he came back out. Kind of like you would in the 24 Hours of Daytona or something similar to that. So at that point, I was just trying something. I knew I didn't have anything for David. You know, it was really the only chance I really had, and I figured, well, I could possibly go lead some laps and kind of see how it goes. I knew straight up, like I said, I wouldn't have had anything. So just trying something, just shaking it up and trying to see if the cars will fall my way.
And of course, you're going to be taking a bit of a break now for the holidays, and you're going to be coming back at Homestead Miami Speedway. Can we expect another strong performance from you there?
Yeah, Homestead is kind of hit or miss for me. It really depends on the setup. But for the most part, I feel I can get another top 5. I feel like if I say I'm a win, then I probably won't win. So I'm just going to say a top 5 and hope for the best.
And before we let you go, could you tell us if you have anybody you'd like to thank today?
Yeah, I got to thank Kickass Beef Jerky for sponsoring the league. I got to also thank Commodore's Garage for helping me out with racecraft and understanding how to build setups on iRacing. They do a great job of that, so you can check them out on their Facebook page. I got to thank RacingBids.com for coming on as well. Check them out on their Facebook page. They do live auctions on Thursdays at 7 o'clock. You can put in for auction for any type of memorabilia. Sheet metal, die-cast, hero cards, you name it, they got it. Got to thank my family, and got to thank my man above.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Brandon Bowie, driver of the number 88 Chevrolet Camaro.
Brandon, I think, really happy with his second place performance. But I think another driver who's going to be happy with the way this race ended, because it didn't start the way he'd like. Trey Edson comes home in third. Trey, what happened in qualifying? No lap time put in, along with you and the rest of the grid for the most part, the second half of the grid. But you end up picking up 15 spots and coming away comfortably in that third position. Just have a couple off tracks back to back there?
I actually had a first lap. It probably would have put me third, and I got cocky, greedy, whatever you want to call it, and I was like, I can beat EJ. So I started over because, iRacing gives you that opportunity. And you kind of regret it, but it is what it is. It worked out. I probably finished where I would have finished had I started up front. Bowie had great speed. David was the favorite coming into the race, and we kind of knew what to expect. He does this to us every time we go to our road course. But yeah, I got through the field pretty clean, and just tried to find some braking points that were safe, I guess would be the best way to put that, and keep it on the track. Just try to nurse it home and not keep the two people I'm chasing in points are Brandon and David. So I was like, let me just do what I need to do, get third, keep them in range. So yeah, happy to bring home third, but definitely at a road course.
We have Homestead coming up in a few weeks, but before that, we have the Christmas break and the New Year's break. Let's get creative here. What do you want for Christmas, and what's your New Year's resolution looking like?
Oh man, that's out of left field. I haven't even thought about it. I don't even have a good answer.
You better think about it. Christmas is in 6 days, man.
I'm old. I'm way past Christmas. At least believing in Santa. Hope there's some kids out there watching. Just the same old adult things. Stay healthy, all that good stuff. I enjoy life. I'm having fun, so I wouldn't change a thing. Looking ahead to Homestead is probably my favorite track on the service, at least in the truck and the Xfinity car. So me and David, I don't know who else is running as far as who's good there, but me and David should put on a heck of a show for you guys. I'm really looking forward to that one.
Edson comes home tonight, rounding out the podium. Before we let you go, who gets it done for that Kick-Ass Beef Jerky number 10?
You just said it, Kickass Beef Jerky. They're sponsored the series, which is cool. and it's a little bit of pressure to have the series sponsor on the side of your car every week. But we've had a good season so far. I can't thank them enough. Everyone head to their website. They got some good holiday specials going on, and thank you guys for working with Joey at Sim500 and putting on a heck of a show.
Well, you are certainly more than welcome, and it's a very, very fun league to broadcast, Trey, so you have yourself a good holiday.
You as well. Y'all have a happy holidays.
Well, it was 46 laps of action here tonight, Nolan, and it was really, really exciting for about the first 20, and everything kind of calmed down, and then the last 5 to 10 laps, everything back up. But I think overall, this Daytona road course was really challenging for everyone up and down this field.
You could definitely tell how challenging it was for everybody, just considering the fact that there were like brake lockups and little wiggles happening all over the place. And that's just one of the factors that made this race such an entertainment to watch.
It was definitely an interesting one to watch, and that is actually going to do it for us here on RaceSpotTV for the Sim500 Kick-Ass Beef Jerky Winter Series. It's been myself, Randy Chineth, Nolan Rempel, and Hugo Louis bringing you all the action. We, of course, have to thank all the sponsors that make this possible. Of course, Kick-Ass Beef Jerky and Kick-Ass Snacks for sponsoring and partnering with this championship, and, of course, the league itself at Sim500. TV cameras are made by Istvan Ballo and TrackCams22.com. Overlays were made beautiful by Andy Werner and animated beautifully by Simon Grossman at Aptioneering.com. And the live timing that we occasionally use for our bigger events was from Nick Tisson at RaceSpot.tv live timing. We hope you all have a nice holiday break. This is usually a bit of a downtime here on the iRacing service, but of course a handful of events coming up in the near future. Of course, there's a lot of big news coming through with the likes of the new Porsche World Championship as well as the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series getting themselves bumped up to $100,000 prize pools, and every other championship on the iRacing service. That means the VRS GT and Endurance Series, both of the World of Outlaws Sprint Car and Late Model World Championships, and the iRacing Rallycross World Championship. They will each be doing battle for a $25,000 prize pool as well. That's not the only thing we got coming. Us at RaceSpotTV are hosting ourselves a Chili Bowl. We have partnered both with iRacing, we have partnered with Thrustmaster, we have partnered with Dark Matter Designs, as well as Down Under Graphics, as well as Ava's Race Against Cancer, so there will be money going to a good cause. Check the general forums right here, right now, if you want to get signed up and run yourself in a full-scale Chili Bowl. $6,000 potentially on the line if the event fills up. I will be posting updating sign-ups on the forums right here, right now. So check that out in just a couple of moments. But until any of that stuff, we hope you have a good one. Bye-bye.